From Instagram Reels to YouTube videos, social media influencing has grown into a multi-million rand industry in South Africa. But now, SARS has made it clear influencers are on the tax radar. A new taxpayer category has been created, requiring influencers to declare their income, whether in cash, products or services. Joining us is Gitumitse Sisana from the South African Institute of Taxation. Gitumitse, good afternoon. Appreciate your time. Now, what exactly does SARS classify as influencer income?
Thanks, Hugo, and I look forward to the discussion with you. So the differentiation between influencer income is not different from the income that any other taxpayer earns. You would have noted from the media statement that SARS released about a week ago, they made their stance very clear, a stance that we as the Institute of Taxation also agree with. So SARS's mandate is to collect tax, and therefore, if you look at how you go from gross income, filtering all the way through to taxable income, SARS has the mandate to collect it. The same way that they will collect from an influencer is how they've been collecting from a doctor or a lawyer or a television broadcaster such as yourself or a tax specialist such as myself. So the categories don't change. One thing we need to just clarify, and again, we do agree with the SARS in this regard, is that income is income. So whether you're an influencer earning cash in kind or cash, we look at what the definition of gross income is as per our Income Tax Act of 1962. So really, this is not anything new. It's just the very basis of taxation. And that influences now, because of the gig economy becoming so big and the fact that the world of work has changed, it's no longer brick and mortar, it's now in this digital age. And, we transact on our cell phones and influencers are, in the news. Nothing has changed. A trade is a trade, and taxable income must be derived and paid over to SARS accordingly.
So one would imagine that for SARS to come up with this new tax bracket or to include influencers is that, one, there are hundreds of thousands of influencers that they can tax, and secondly, that there's a huge windfall to the tax man. Just clarify those numbers for us.
Excellent. So the basis of taxation, so we've got about 60 million odd taxpayers. If you look at VAT being a basis of taxation, or we look at 2.9 corporate taxpayers, even individuals, I think the new SARS numbers will be released shortly or have been released. I just need to just get myself clarified on those ones. But we need to realize that taxpayers as influencers don't really change from the normal, ordinary taxpayer. There is no windfall of cash that they will be now collecting. It's just the information or the declaration of income or remuneration that should have been forthcoming that the SARS is now realizing is not being declared, and it is their legal mandate to collect it. So, for example, SARS has for a number of years used what we call revenue augmentation. So they look at what we declare in our income tax returns vis-a-vis what is declared or what balances or monies are moving through our accounts. For example, if I declare that I work for the Institute of Taxation and I have my IRP5, my employer pays my PAYE, has withheld it accordingly. I've got my interest tax exemptions or my interest certificates from my bank or, a certificate from my retirement annuity fund. All that information is readily available to SARS even before the filing season opens, right? Now, they look at my bank account, which suggests that I'm earning money way above what has been declared to them on the tax return. As a prudent tax authority, what they would then do is they would then issue additional assessments and question if you're declaring that you only earn about R1 million per annum, but your cash deposits in your bank suggest that you are earning about 10 million. That's where the revenue augmentation comes in. You now have to declare. Influencers have caught themselves in that sort of position because they haven't declared the income, thinking that income from trade exchanges or, unboxing or going on a holiday that seems to be paid for, and I don't have to declare because I'm just going to unbox this particular product or drive this particular car, doesn't have a cash value to it. Everything has a cash value. And if you go back to the basis of taxation in Section 1 of the Act, it says anything that you earn as a South African resident in cash or in kind. So those trade exchanges, those holidays that you go on just to, preview how this particular luxury hotel looks like, that equivalent market value of what you would have paid had you not been an influencer has to be declared and included in your gross income and then funnels through to your taxable income. If I may, just on this point, this is only one of the fair bases of taxation. Because if you look at our tax system today, as it has been operating for numerous of years, everything that we earn has to fall into the big pot called our gross income. From there, we have allowable deductions. So influencers can also deduct certain expenditure that they will incur in the production of income in their trade of being an influencer. So those rightly will be, taken out in terms of Section 11. And then obviously there's a cap, looking at Section 23G of the Act. So they can deduct certain expenditure. There's also rebates. There's also thresholds. So it's only fair that if you get those deductions and exemptions, that one include all the income up front and not strip the base or the fiscus of money that is owed.
The one question that comes to mind is, if you're a 12-year-old and you're an influencer and you're earning, do you get an exemption because of age, or does it not matter? As long as you're getting income, then you're liable to pay tax.
Excellent question. So you look at the threshold for 2024, 25, 26 tax year of assessment as well, because we know that didn't change. So if you earn over 95,750 and you're below the age of 65, you have to register for tax. So if I'm a 12-year-old and I'm doing these beautiful videos and I'm earning money, I'm monetizing my trade, and I cross that threshold and I'm below that age, you have to register for taxation. The alternative here, and if you look at what SARS is saying, is that these particular group or class of taxpayers called influencers would fall into provisional taxpayers. So this is not a separate type of tax. It's just a tax where you estimate what your total liability of tax will be for a year. And then you pay over that money to SARS in February and August. And if you've shortfallen, then you'll pay in the next year as well, just as a top-up payment. So coming back to your question, and which is it's a very important question to realize that this doesn't segregate according to age or where you're based or what you're making. If it is income, it has to be declared. If you look at what a resident is in terms of the Income Tax Act, if you're ordinarily resident here, then everything that you make in the tax world, we say worldwide income, irrespective of your age, what you make in South Africa and abroad must fall into that pot. Very important question, just coming back to that as well as a second part, is that we realize that there are those who undertake the trade. I now classify it as a trade of influencing, and they are not well versed on what the implications may be. This may be as a result of your age or as a result that you haven't been advised. But because this has come upon the radar of SARS, and it is in fact not something new because other African countries, it has come on their radar. If we look at what the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development is also doing in terms of, taxing the digital economy. So this world of taxing digital economy and, the conduits there too is not something that is new. It's important that you seek the correct tax advice from a registered tax practitioner who can advise you of the many, many shortfalls that may come if you don't understand what your obligations are as a taxpayer in this bracket.
Now
this group.
I had asked earlier, and I don't think I quite got the answer from you as to the number of influencers that SARS believes are on their, or that they have on their radar, I think is the first part of the question. And the second part is, how is SARS going to manage or enforce compliance in this new space?
Excellent. And sorry for missing that answer. In fact, I would love to provide you the answer to that, but I don't work, I work closely with the SARS and not for the SARS. So I cannot tell you exactly how many influencers have come under their radar and what numbers they're looking at in this regard. I trust that now that the Commissioner has released a statement clarifying the position of SARS around social influencers, as they have with other segments, more information will be released, as time goes along. So unfortunately, I can't give you those numbers there. But how SARS will enforce compliance is how they've been doing it with other taxpayers in any event. What SARS uses is going back to the revenue augmentation. That's one of the methods that they use. And you'd notice from the Commission of SARS, something which you also appreciate is that they have spoken about a whole of government approach. So end-to-end consumer as a taxpayer, how I transact at one end of the stick is how it will filter through all the way to SARS. So essentially, influencers cannot hide any of the income. I was fortunate enough to engage with a couple of influencers about a week ago, and I came to understand, the business within which they work. I have massive respect for influencers after that particular engagement. And one thing that they mentioned is that when they enter into contracts, I'm going to profile this particular cell phone, monetary values are placed on the work that they do. So that is the remuneration that the influencer would earn. In the books of an advertising company or the books of an agent, they would assign that to, for example, advertising costs, right? And because in the production of income and how they will assess their tax, they might be claiming a deduction for the cell phone that they've now given Hugo to go and to premiere, right? Or to preview. However, there's no associated income that is recorded anyway. So that's where the loop breaks. So SARS, again, has the mandate to collect all the taxes. If there's a deduction on the one end, because the tax system does allow us to deduct legitimate expenses in the production of our trade or production of income, but there's no associated inclusion of this remuneration anyway with any other person. That is where it comes. So what SARS will then do to enforce the compliance is, of course, they recognize that voluntary compliance, if you look at the media statement, is what they're fashioned after. But if there's no voluntary compliance, we do know that there are auditors, there are investigators in certain units that will they'll raise assessments and approach tax payers in order for them to pay the taxes that are due to the taxman. So all in all, you cannot hide the revenue that you receive, whether it be in cash or in kind. There is never anything that is too small that you shouldn't be declaring. If you feel that you should be declaring, rather register as a provisional taxpayer. In fact, SARS at the beginning of this filing season did something quite amazing, where for the first time they've invited provisional taxpayers to actually be auto-assessed. Previously, this group of taxpayers were never part of the auto-assessment process. So if you're an influencer and you just don't know how to calculate your income, register as a provisional taxpayer, accept the invitation to be auto-assessed, and SARS will do the calculation for you. If SARS owes you money, they'll pay you back. They do it in 72 hours. If you owe them, you'll then pay in those periods of provisional tax.
Fantastic. Just a one question as we wrap. We've talked about many individuals who strike deals with the various organizations and are on a given product or services in kind. Though those services and products have a monetary value, there isn't actual money that accrues to them, right? Now, if your business of influence is based purely on receiving items in kind, how do you convert this to a cash amount that you then pay to SARS? Are you expected to liquidate some of those products or services?
Excellent question. Again, the interaction that I had with the influencers, because I also had to grapple with that question myself, was when you're given this particular trade exchange, that's what the terminology that they use, there is a value, there's a market value that is placed in the contract that you sign with the associated brand. So we're going to give you this box to the value of 5,000 Rand, and you have to unbox it and utilize the services. That 5,000 Rand is the market value that you need to declare as part of your income. If it is not included in your contract, then again, this is where it comes as a prudent taxpayer. Ignorance of the law is not an excuse. So you would then have to go, for example, and find out what the market value of this particular, for example, cell phone would have been had I just transacted and bought it on a normal basis. And that is what you include in your income. In your gross income, You do your deductions, you do your exemptions, remove the rebates, and that's your taxable income that you then declare over to SARS. So very important, just to reiterate this point, going back to section 1 of the definition of gross income, it's cash or cash in kind. So the trade exchanges, there's nothing such as a freebie. That must all be calculated at the market value as at that date, included in your gross income, and then you go through the whole calculation. Just one other point that's actually quite important as well. The Income Tax Act stipulates that it's cash that you receive or that accrues to you. So it's very important. As a brand, as Kitumeti, who's, for example, signed up with this brand, and I'm going to have this contract for a period of 2 years, for example, premiering how this product helps me with my hair growth, for example. And I now have an unconditional entitlement to that money to be paid. That's where the accrue part comes in from a tax terminology perspective. So as at the point where you become legally obligated to receive that money in terms of the contract, even if it is over a couple of years, you must include the full amount of that contractual value into your gross income in that specific year of assessment in order to determine your taxable income. So, long-term deals and short-term remuneration, here's a product, profile it, it all falls part of your income and must be declared.
Kitumeti Sasana, appreciate your time, Acting Deputy CEO, South African Institute of Taxation, talking to us about the impact of taxation on social media influencers.